Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm gonna do some housekeeping before we start. So if you need caption, please click on the CC button at the bottom of the page. Also, please keep yourself in mute unless you would like to speak up. The mute button is on the left-hand side of the screen. You can also hold the space bar to then talk. There's a few ways of visualizing this meeting. So you can use the gallery or the speaker view. And to change it, it's enough that you click at the top left-hand corner and adapt the vision as it suits you. You can also edit your name so that it has your preferred pronouns or the information you would like to share about how to refer to you. And to do so, it's enough that you click the three dots on the corner of your camera image and then select name. Please respect other people in the room and do not assume the preferred pronouns or their context or their lived experience. This event is being recorded, and the recording will be made available on the website to anyone who cannot be here today. So if you do not wish to appear in the recording, please make sure to turn off your camera, or you can also message us privately and we'll make sure to remove the image from the recording. Kindly message Abadur. You'll see him in the GLA Abadur window. He's part of the GLA and it's here to support with the technicalities of the event and to answer any questions. So feel free to directly message him in private. And a bit of introduction. My name is Linda Rocco and I'm Liberty creative producer until this summer. I'm a white woman with long, straight, blondish hair, some round glasses, and I'm in my 30s. Today, we have two BSL interpreters. We have Katie and Vicky that are spotlighted. And we also have a captioner, Nathalie, that is here for the caption. And there's also a live link to access those who would like a full screen of the text. So to ask a question today, you can either write and type your question in the chat, or you can raise your hand in the reaction button at the bottom of the screen, or you can also sign your question by allowing your camera to turn on. There's also in the reaction button the option of speeding up or slowly down the conversation. So if you feel like I'm talking too quick or too slow, feel free to send me some reactions and I'll adapt accordingly. And finally, just a little bit of a structure of today. So after this introduction, we are going through the Liberty R&D application process, and I will speak for approximately 15 minutes. Hopefully, I will already answer some of the general questions that you might have. I will then pass the word to Rachel Harris, who is Lewisham's senior producer. We can see her saying hi with the hand. And Rachel will do a 10 minutes presentation on Lewisham key themes as London Borough of Culture, as well as the expectations from the R&D Award. And then we will start answering a first round of questions, which can be voiced out easily. So you can talk to us, but they can also be signed or typed in the chat, as you prefer. And then around 11, we plan a 10 minutes comfort break to also organize the questions that we will receive in the chat. And then from 11:10 until midday, we will just take all the questions and answering to your doubts. So if it's all clear, if no one has any question, I'm gonna share my screen again and talk about the R&D Commission. Okay. There we go. So Liberty is the Mayor of London flagship festival of works by deaf and disabled artists. The festival is annual and it's free, and it offers an inclusive, accessible and cultural experience for everyone. It has been presented by the Mayor of London since 2003, all in high-profile locations, including Trafalgar Square, Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park and South Bank Centre. Following the cancellation of the festival in 2021 due to COVID-19, Liberty 2022 will complement Lewisham's exciting program of events as part of the London Borough of Culture 2022. And then in 2023 will be in Croydon. So Liberty is now part of the London Borough of Culture program and really taps into the locality. So what we are looking for. We welcome ideas from London-based deaf, disabled and neurodivergent artists and organizations at all career stages to create or adapt work which is engaging and thought-provoking. All art forms are welcome, therefore music, visual art, comedy, poetry, street art, dance, but also digital art and participatory installation. The work proposed must undertake a research and development process. So that means that we won't accept finished pieces of work. With the R&D, we mean that the work needs to go through a process of research that can be either condensed and work towards the presentation in January, to some sort of presentation, which is often sharing the learning, but it can also be a collaborative process of research, therefore that gets shaped through the practice in a collaborative endeavor. But it's really pivotal that the application that comes are not finished pieces of work ready to be displayed or showcased, but they really go through a research and development process. The grant funding available is for projects ranging from £3,000 to £10,000. It's important that everyone working in the project is paid, must be paid, especially the main artists. It's pivotal for us that this is considered within the application. And in the budget breakdown that you will find in the application form, we also stress on access. Access both for the applicants, so what access requirements the applicants needs in order to deliver the work, but also access for audiences to experience the work's presentation in January. So that means, for example, if the work is highly visual, it's creatively thinking towards how to make this work accessible for people who cannot necessarily experience visually the work, but will need other senses. Or it's really thinking about how to embed access in a creative way to make the work accessible to deaf and disabled community, which are our main audience. Therefore, it's important for us that there's this consideration within the application form. And finally, this R&D process needs to have a sort of a presentation in some form during January 2022, which might be sharing the learning as a small sort of scratch presentation performance, but it's important that this sort of public outcome as also a moment for feedbacks. And it will be in January at the opening event of Lewisham Borough of Culture. Key criteria. So the applicant must be based in London. We will then obviously look at the artistic quality and the strength of the artistic and conceptual idea. Obviously the consideration of the R&D, so the strong research component. It has to be context specific. Therefore, it has to relate to Liberty as a flagship deaf and disabled festival, but also it needs to be aware of Lewisham London Borough of Culture artistic goals. That means that the applicant doesn't need to be based in Lewisham necessarily. The applicant must be based in London, but it's important that the application reflects Lewisham themes, which will be presented today, but they are also actually in our information pack and on Lewisham website. It's important to us to feel and to see a consideration of Lewisham communities or themes as London Borough of Culture. It's then important that the project is able to engage diverse audiences, and particularly deaf and disabled community, and that is financially viable, and the delivery and timescale is realistic and achievable. Therefore, really important that the budget is realistic and feasible, while still maintaining sort of like an ambitious component. How to apply? So in the application form, you will see outlined some eligibility questions, therefore relating to living in London, or sort of being able to apply. There will be some question on yourself and about your work with some words limit. There will be question on describing the project goals and providing a budget breakdown. So the budget breakdown is in this slide, which I'm going to describe. So on the left, you see the project costs, and on the right, sort of like a description breakdown where you can explain further. Obviously, it's important to us to see a consideration in the budget. Do not worry if it's not perfect in this sense, as long as everything has been considered. So what we look for is the items are kind of a lead artist fee. So again, your time, your contribution, collaborators fees. I must say that for fees that are nationally recognized, you can always use the AN website, that is the artist newsletter, and they have fees and rates for artists that are commonly accepted for artists, but also art workers that you can refer to, which are obviously, you know, aware and conscious of those fee systems. Then there's research costs that can involve all the material, but also sort of what you need to deliver research, to conduct this process of research, the equipment and material that you need for the work, project management costs. Therefore, if that's a person of what do you need to make sure that the project is in budget, in timeline, and follow the sort of a coherent process. Project documentation, considering how your project will be documented. The technical and production, therefore, if it's a performance, thinking about the production and technical development of it, or if it's a artwork, so an object-based work, then thinking about how the display or the production of it, so the material, but also, let's say, a projector if it's a film. So making sure that it's all listed. And then the 2 access I was mentioning, so access for the applicants, everything that you need in order to deliver the work, that might be, you know, access support, whatever sort of requirement and adjustment you need to deliver the work, and then access cost for audiences. If you are a recipient of access to work, it's fine for us to put it in the application as something that you receive. If you don't receive access to work, it's fine anyway, and we can provide that as long as it's clear in the application. And then a contingency, which is generally a 10%, and again, it's important to us that there's this 10% of space for things to adjust. The application can be sent as in like the documents that you'll find online, but you can also submit via video or audio, as long as obviously you follow the main questions, and we can as well receive that with a maximum duration of 5 minutes, and we will be happy to accept that. The completed application form must be sent by 5 p.m. on the 30th of June. So this is it from my side now. I will now pass the word to Rachel Harris from Lewisham. She will do as well a sort of like a 10 minutes presentation, and then we can start taking questions. I can see already some hands up, so bear with us a few minutes until we sort of go through the last presentation, and then we can take all the questions. So yeah, thank you.
Hello, everyone. Really lovely to meet you. My name is Rachel Harris. I'm a white woman wearing glasses who also likes wearing bright colours. I'm senior producer for Borough of Culture 2022, which means I'm working with colleagues on developing the content for the year. I come from a background of festival programming and producing and participatory arts practice, and I'm a proud Lewisham resident. Slide, please. So the Boroughs of Culture, the Mayor's London Borough of Culture Award, is designed to bring Londoners together and put culture at the heart of local communities, celebrating the diversity of London boroughs and demonstrating that culture is for everyone. It is designed to connect communities, bring resource into the borough, and showcase across London each borough's own unique culture. Each Borough of Culture is awarded after a competitive process where artistic ambition and social impact has to be demonstrated within an integral plan about the borough's future. Slide, please. So a bit of context on how we got here. Just over a year ago, after an extensive consultation process, Lewisham was awarded Borough of Culture 2022. We're only the third borough to be awarded this programme, and as with the previous two in Waltham Forest and Brent, we will be responding to the particular time and place that we're in. So in October 2019, the bid was submitted. February 2020, we won, hooray. March 2020, so we all know what happened in March at that point with the lockdown, and at that stage the council pivoted to its COVID response and all planning ceased. Fast forwarding to spring 2021 with the Borough of Culture team in place, and we're now back to planning for 2022, and the programme is evolving at pace alongside an energetic fundraising campaign. Slide, please. So our delivery partners, Lewisham appointed partners who came on board after an open process. Our programme partner is the Albany Theatre, who many of you may know. Education partner, Lewisham Education Arts Network. We have a volunteering partner, Lewisham Local, and a Culture and Diversity Forum was appointed, drawn from outstanding local individuals who feed into the decision making. And of course, the GLA, who are with us for the whole journey. Slide, please. So a bit about Lewisham as a borough. Lewisham's a cosmopolitan area in southeast London, known for its rich mix of business and cultural organisations and thriving independent neighbourhoods. It has one of the highest number of parks and green spaces in London, interestingly, and has excellent transport links. It's one of London's most ethnically diverse boroughs and currently has an approximate 50-50 ratio of Black and minority ethnic and white population. Lewisham has a thriving community of artists and creative organisations and London-wide and national reputations, and a very rich heritage of dance, spoken word, visual art and music. Many of these represent a flourishing grassroots scene, but Lewisham is also home to national and world-renowned organisations such as Goldsmiths University, Trinity Lab and the Horniman Museum. It's a place that's changing rapidly. There are many developments happening in the town centres and local neighbourhoods with the interesting creative tensions that this brings. Lewisham is proud of its diversity, energy, creativity and resilience. Slide, please. So Lewisham Borough of Culture. In 2022, a year-long cultural programme will put critical issues at its heart. To reflect our personality, the tone is raw, not manicured, and hopefully thought-provoking and challenging, from a call to action on climate emergency to a celebration of our migrant communities. From venues to parks, schools and street corners, thousands of people will participate, celebrating Lewisham's rich history of cultural activism through music, dance, public art, film, spoken word, all the things Linda was speaking about and everything in between. We will use culture and the benefits of working together to recover from COVID, hand in hand with our colleagues across council services. The programme will provide insights into our communities and the issues that affect us, harnessing civic action to deliver a legacy of social change. 2022 is a fantastic opportunity to shine a light on our borough and our partners, it's a wonderful offer attracting visitors from London and beyond. So the themes. When developing the bid with our stakeholders, the central theme of cultural activism emerged, the power of art and culture with the people of Lewisham to change lives. 3 key strands emerged from the cultural activism idea to form the central framework. 1, we are strengthened by our diversity, a celebration of diverse communities. 2, we will protect this place we love, a call to action on climate emergency. 3, we will be happy here, a commitment to building an inclusive and connected society and a celebration of Lewisham as a borough of sanctuary. This cultural manifesto hopefully reflects issues that people relate to. We will embed artists within public services to lead change, stimulate debate and find creative solutions. We will invite artists to bring international perspectives. We will use our strength in participatory and community arts practice to engage all our residents and hear the voices of our most marginalised communities. We will change the status quo, challenge the status quo, Freudian slip, develop pioneering new approaches, share our learning and inspire others. We will importantly use this opportunity to come together again, celebrate and have fun. Slide, please. So the opening day in January 2022, this will be the context for the sharing of the Liberty R&D work. Imagine waking up on day 1 of Lewisham's Borough of Culture Year and everything feels just a little bit different. It's just day 1, but it's also day 1 of something special. We are starting the year with the aim for people to encounter culture across the borough in their everyday lives rather than in one big event. An I Am Lewisham creative kit lands on your doormat. You leave your house and a street sweeper is wearing a coat designed by local creatives and made from recycled materials. A fanfare for Lewisham composed by Trinity brass players is playing at the DLR as you start your commute. Activities will happen indoors and outdoors, on the street and in venues, following a day in the life of Lewisham. A baton pass of events will work its way through the day, on the hour, every hour. A group of young ambassadors will map and communicate what's going on across the borough in real time throughout the day from a young people's media hub. Slide, please. So our day 1 will be a taster of what people can expect from our Borough of Culture Year. An event to bring us together again. A PR moment to put Lewisham on the map as a culturally ambitious destination, and a moment of joy in these turbulent times. All over Lewisham, things will happen in a big invitation to join in. The content of the Liberty R&Ds will determine how the work is shown. For example, where they are installed or performed in one place or at different sites. We will need to plan this together with the successful projects. Slide, please. So as Linda mentioned, we would like January to be a sharing of insight into your material, processes and content. It will be framed as a work in progress, but we do want you to be ready to share your work at that point with the wider public. As an artist, you do not have to be based in Lewisham, but we are asking that the applications are responsive to the themes of the Borough of Culture Year and sensitive to the context. Where appropriate, we will work with the successful bids to link them with our Lewisham communities. And finally, to say that we're really looking forward to receiving your ideas. Back to Linda, thank you.
Thank you, Rachel, thank you so much. I was actually already taking time to answer some of the questions in the chat. So there we go. Is there someone with questions? Feel free to raise your hands or just unmute yourself and we can go through. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
So thanks for this. On the website, when I was reading, you talked about it being family friendly. So I've quite a specific question. I deliver arts-based sex education in primary and secondary schools, and there's been a lot of kind of backlash around sex ed, but you know, all the work is age appropriate. Is that something that might be received well here? Do you know what I mean?
Well, I would say on my side, certainly, as you know, the educational aspect, it's fundamental. Therefore, you know, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be accepted. You know, obviously, we definitely are looking at this sort of we definitely appreciate educational activities, educational outputs, and in this sense as well, if the wish is to engage with specific communities in Lewisham, if the project is successful, then there's also obviously a willingness from Lewisham to work closely with the successful projects and applicants to link them to the community of relevance. So absolutely.
Great. And then just on that, so we work with a queer youth group in Lewisham. For example, in the application, would it be useful to say that in the R&D we will be working with them because we are, or would you still want to link us to someone in Lewisham afterwards anyway, if we were successful?
Absolutely, feel free to mention it. It's great that you already have this contact. You know, Lewisham can bridge in the case of, you know, not having this connection but wanted to connect with a specific community. But if you already are working or have, you know, want to work with a specific community, feel free to mention it. Lewisham can come in, you know, with the successful applicants in case of need, you know, really offering ad hoc support. In this case, could be linking with a community or, you know, working with specific people. But obviously, if those people are already there, please feel free to mention it as well. I don't know if Rachel has something to add, but yeah.
I've literally just said in the chat, yeah, where you already have links, please do highlight them. We're not wanting to go through a kind of bureaucratic process for the sake of it as a matchmaking. That's only as appropriate and where people should require it. But absolutely, if you've already got intrinsic links with communities, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Can I ask one last part?
Go for it.
So with the work in progress presentation, for example, our R&D process would be an iterative process with the young people, honing a creative workshop which responds to like queer education. So that's like a workshop we would do with the young people, and then in the actual presentation, just like presenting what we learned rather than actually delivering the workshop. It sounds like that's what you would want. Is that correct?
Yes, the presentation can take, I would say, many forms. We're not looking for necessarily something, you know, that it's huge and overly prepared or overly packed at this stage, because we recognize that, you know, from more or less September till January, there's whole the process of the R&D, and January is mainly an occasion for opening up the work to the public and present the learning in some forms. And some forms might be more defined than others. We're very open towards whatever presentation and having that discussion of the level of presentation, because obviously we are looking at commissioning, you know, a minimum of 7 works to a maximum of 15, more or less. So we definitely expect a variety of stages as well, and levels of work that can be sort of like, you know, maybe finished in January after the 6th month, you know, already finished or not really finished, but wanting to open up to an audience and to the public to have that confrontation. So it's really, we're not necessarily put lots of pressure on the final presentation itself. It really comes as the end of a process, I would say.
Okay, thank you so much.
Can I ask a question, please?
Of course.
Yeah, I wanted to understand, so with the access costs, does that come out of the budget you already have? Because with the Arts Council and things, the access is on top of.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know if it is in top of or
it's
included.
not on top of. We put in the budget, there's two levels of access that we put in there. So one is for the applicants to deliver the activity. So let's say the applicants, to go back at the workshop example, you know, it would be for the applicant to be able to deliver this workshop and whatever access requirements the applicant has, you know, to deliver a series of workshops, either that be the transport to get to the venue, a BSL interpreter, captions, you know, all the access that the applicants needs in order to deliver the workshop. And there's access for the audience to experience the work in January. So again, if it's a workshop presentation that might need some thinking around having an interpreter, but also potentially having audio description. So it's thinking towards that. I must also say that it's important to see this in the budget. However, we're not necessarily particularly, you know, extra picky on asking you to factor in already everything, considering that you haven't started working yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's important for us to see this consideration, but equally, the selected projects working with Lewisham in the January presentation will work together towards as well thinking about how to best present the work in an accessible way. I'm not sure if Rachel, you want to add something.
Hi, thank you for that question. I think you've covered it. I think it's that yes, in this instance, unlike the Arts Council, there's not a separate access fund, and we just would like to see it considered, even if you don't know yet the full detail of it, because we do, as with the previous question, understand the challenge of needing to describe something at the beginning of a research process where you don't actually know what the outcome is going to be. So we do accept that, but yes, please factor it into your budgeting.
Okay, and also with that in mind, is there support for people with disabilities to actually make the application?
Unfortunately, we don't have support workers in the application process. However, we offer flexible ways of applying. Therefore, you know, we can accept a video application that sort of, you know, can follow the questions. I must also say that maybe if there's particular difficulties, we can have an email sort of conversation afterwards, and we can see how we can best support. Maybe if, you know, if there's particular problematics, we can see how we can support that individually, but generally, you know, it's either kind of the document or also a video or an audio where the sort of, you know, you follow the main questions and then you answer. It can also be BSL if that's an option.
Okay, thank you.
Rona, I see you have the hands up.
Yes, the first show I ever did when I moved here from New York many decades ago was in Lewisham, and I have very fond memories of it. And one of the most recent shows I did was in Deptford. So I kind of feel a little bit of an affinity with the whole sort of Deptford Lewisham area, even though I actually live in Islington. But I was a little bit curious more about the whole Lewisham theme thing. Also, I've never submitted an unfinished project for R&D before, and I was wondering whether or not the R&D was something that we had to undertake on our own, or whether that was something that you, as an organization, would support us with, because I'm getting some ideas for what I could sort of submit as an idea for a project, but I'm not really sure whether that's something, whether I'd have to do the legwork to make the project a reality on my own, because I'm working as a solo performer and I'd like to collaborate with other people. Whether or not I'd have to find those other people myself, or whether you would be able to kind of like link me into a Lewisham-based organization, for example, that I might be able to collaborate with.
Do you want to take it, Rachel? Thanks, Rona.
So thank you for the question. So we don't have producing capacity to produce each individual project, but we would be very, very willing to, in that case, kind of match you with a potential organisation. In terms of what an R&D, what's expected of an R&D, I think it's thinking of, we're interested in hearing about exciting artistic ideas. And then this is the bit where you think, oh, how should I start? Which collaborators should I work with? Can I test this partnership? If you're a visual artist, I've never worked with X material before. Let me test a particular sound world or technology that I've never used before. So it's that bit of it that we want to really be able to give people the opportunity to play with for this funding. We don't have preordained ideas. It doesn't have to be workshops. So it's that bit of it where you think, how might I test out an innovation in my practice that I've not been afforded the time or the space to do yet, and then working back from that as to what you would need to put into your application. So it's a fine line, because we with the successful bids, we would most certainly work together to embed with communities, but we need to assess the applications, knowing that somebody would definitely be able to follow through with it, even if we couldn't find a producer for them after the bid, if you see what I mean. Does that make sense? Do you want to add anything, Linda?
No, I think it was clear. Sorry, there's some works obviously now happening. But yeah, we in the budget, what we mentioned as well, contributors fees or project management fees that would allow as well you as a solo artist, as a solo performer, having someone to bring on board to collaborate with you in the process. I think was it helpful, Rona?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking more about collaborating with a venue in terms of like working with a choir, or working with other singers and putting a show together with other singers with a particular Lewisham theme. That was kind of, I was thinking along those sort of lines. So, I mean, I know Deptford isn't Lewisham, but, you know, an organisation like Deptford Arts Centre or something like along those lines. So, I mean, I'll submit the application and we'll see what happens, basically. Thanks for that.
Thank you. We have Louise, Benjamin, and Bethan afterwards. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, to factor in the budget, would we need to show, say, if you're putting up an installation or an artwork, would you need to show like the figures for, say, Lewisham Council to be able to help you to do that? Like, say, to fund a person to come down and help you install it? You know, is it that sort of specific? Would you need to think about those things? And if so, how much would the council charge to do that?
Yeah, it would be difficult to name installation figures without knowing more detail, but the council doesn't have a team of art installers. It would need to be factored into your budget under installation costs. We're working on the whole licensing issues, particularly if, you know, people want to showcase their work in shop windows or that kind of thing. That would need to be a kind of conversation over the next month going forward. I'd probably put something in like installation costs, technical get-in, that kind of thing. And then where that's sourced from could be kind of worked out in real time at a later date. But the council itself don't have kind of installers. But depending where you were wanting to install, it might be necessary to collaborate with the council in terms of permissions or that kind of thing, health and safety.
Would I, because I'm thinking of working literally the installation in in the street. So would I collaborate with the council first and put that in the, get in touch with them and then put that, I've done that in the application? Or would that be something that you say I would like to be able to?
I'd say it is an aspiration, because the Borough of Culture, it is a wonderful collaboration drawing together the council itself. So we would hope to kind of give a conduit to those conversations afterwards.
Lovely. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Benjamin.
Hi there. Thanks very much for the opportunity to ask these questions. It's a question about the potential availability of workspace, workshop space for conducting the R&D, whether or not there are venues already associated with the festival that might be able to house these, and if so, whether or not that would incur a cost, like would that need to be factored into the budget? That's part one of the question.
This is kind of pre-R&D, isn't it? Yeah. I would probably put a cost in, because we wouldn't be able to necessarily know that in advance of the deadline. Again, we would do our utmost to help link you up. But when we look at all applications, we want to sort of know that they could definitely go ahead and that someone's thought that through. If they were to get the green light. So I'd put a budget line in, and then if the application is successful, we would most definitely kind of assist with trying to find spaces. There is actually a mapping exercise going on sort of now in real time, but we can't guarantee at this stage that it would be free. So I'd err on the safe side and just put a line in that say that would be the first bit of your R&D, would be to actually locate a good space to work in. Because obviously we need much more detail about your working practices to know where might be helpful.
Great. Okay. Thank you. So if the R&D was involving planning a series of walked guided routes that by which visitors might navigate the festival, are there any already kind of earmarked locations that the festival is looking to be prominent spaces within the festival itself that might be able to be worked into the routes that we are thinking about engaging with in the walks?
So again, you are kind of walking in our shoes. That's literally the exercise that for all the wider projects that discussion is happening. Lewisham's interesting. There's not, and this is why it's kind of, it is reflected in the way that the Borough of Culture is actually manifesting. There's not a sort of definitive town centre. There are multiple spaces that have importance to people for different reasons, and we would like to reflect that. I think what's great about what you've just said is if you highlight in the application that you want to work with us to find those important spaces that are meaningful to you, and that you would collaborate to kind of hit different agendas about those walkways. Yeah, every artist, every resident has a different sort of favourite idea of what they would consider to be important placing. But maybe if you can outline what you want to get from those spaces, so if it's kind of local importance, or if it's a high tower block, or lots of passers-by, or a quiet space on a hill, you know, even if we don't know what those spaces are, you can demonstrate that you've thought that through.
Great. Okay. Thank you. So I guess the last question is the places that you mentioned as being partner organisations. I'm familiar with most of them, but are all of them do all of them have concrete locations within Lewisham?
So I think I mentioned, because I was trying to make the point actually that there are just hundreds and hundreds of wonderful artists and creative organisations of all scales in Lewisham. So the ones I mentioned probably are all building based. So one was Goldsmiths University, one was Trinity Laban, one was the Albany Theatre in Deptford, and one was the Horniman Museum. And they are all venue based. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. You mentioned something with the acronym LEAN.
Yes. So I think the slides might have been going awry at that moment. So that's these are our delivery partners. That was our education delivery partner. So that's Lewisham Education Action Network. And that's an example of an organisation that collaborates with Borough of Culture in Lewisham in order to be a conduit and a link between schools and the programme. So to make sure opportunities for linking up with artistic projects get out to schools in a way that is across the whole borough, not just schools that put themselves forward, and in a way that we can listen to how schools would like to be represented in the ways that they would ideally want to work. So that's a two-way partnership. And LEAN, the acronym I used, Lewisham Education Arts Network, they're the people that are the conduit.
That's great. Okay, thanks very much. Cheers.
Thanks, Benjamin. We have Bethan, then Colleen, and then Pinny. Apologies if I misread or pronounce your name.
Oh yeah, hi. My question is that I'd be keen to submit a creative writing themed project that engages new or emerging writers on festival themes. And my first question is that the kind of activity that you are looking to fund? So for example, a workshop, either virtual or in person, that is creative writing based.
I mean, I guess going back to Linda's original slide about the Liberty Festival, it's very much in the public domain. It's a festival that is across all art forms, all media. We do want it to have quite a strong outdoors element, but if you can write a description that is persuasive, that your work can access an audience within that kind of construct, then yeah, we wouldn't at all at this stage rule anything out.
Okay, great. And one other thing that I was wondering is, so I usually, if I'm kind of pitching or running a workshop, I have it quite fully formed. So I just was trying to get clear in my head kind of the R&D elements of an application that could work around, you know, a writing workshop. Kind of would that include, you know, me factoring in time to play with ideas, experiment, devise content, research different writing props, maybe come out with visual prompts? Is that the kind of thing you'd be looking for in an R&D element?
Everything you just mentioned, so this is about being persuasive in your application, that you are literally trying something new, that's something that's not, you haven't had the opportunity or the idea to try before, and to test out new ways. So yeah, absolutely, all of the above.
Oh, great, that's very helpful, thank you.
Thanks. Colleen?
Hi, I don't have a camera. Thank you so much for taking the time and for the different formats. I appreciate that very much. My question, two questions. Is there support if you have a disability and it's difficult to fill out applications? Sometimes that's the part of the problem I have with a lot of these things, is getting through the application.
Unfortunately, we don't have access support workers for the application itself. Okay. But we accept different ways, you know, we can work with audio or video. But Colleen, if you want to write me in the chat, okay, or I'll write you privately, maybe I can get your email and we can see what we can do to help for getting through the application process.
The ideas are there, it's just getting through
the
application. Which is not funny, but really hard. The second question I have is, if I don't live in the borough, but I have a lot of ties to it in different neighborhoods, and the idea we've talked about is like a participatory thing. But I'm wondering about the insurance, like the things when you ever do something that's I can't think of the word, like the insurance involved, the public liability insurance. Is that because I don't have experience with that, but I would imagine that would be a huge part of what's allowed. we are doing something that's outside with the public. So maybe that's a question. I don't know where to ask that question, but that's the first thing. That making the work is probably not the hard part, but for me, it's the legal stuff around what's going to be, what the festival, the legal stuff, that kind of thing. I don't know how to ask the question. Sorry.
No, I think I understand. Correct me if I haven't got it right, but if the projects that are successful, they will be completely absorbed and embraced within the structure of what's happening around what we're calling day one. So you would have front of, if there was a kind of performative element, you'd have front of house colleagues supporting the work. It would be within the marketing campaign. There would be kind of health and safety checks that would be taken care of in collaboration with you. So we would expect that artists are kind of making allowances for that and preempting that those conversations would be happening. In terms of public liability, it is quite a norm for artists to have that individually, that insurance, and it can be picked up for not a huge expense. So if that's a very great part of what you're going to put in for, then maybe put something like, further research would have to be done if it's kind of trapeze work or something that we can't talk about right here now. Then that could be part of the application itself.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that's clear, and I appreciate, and thank you so much for this opportunity. It's really exciting.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
I also just left a link on still AN, the one I mentioned before of the artist fees. They do is, from my research, the cheapest artists or arts organizer insurance that is in existent in the UK. So I think it's £39 per artist, and is up to 1 million of liability or similar. So just as a reference, if you want to have a look at it. And Pinny.
Hi, thanks so much for this. I'm a small D deaf filmmaker, and this is such an inspiring opportunity. Thank you. I wanted to work with, one of the problems I've identified is that hard of hearing people find it quite hard to find their own community. There's things for people who are big capital D deaf, but for people who've lost their hearing later in life or have hard of hearing, it's quite difficult to find each other. So I was thinking about finding that community within Lewisham and making a collaborative documentary with them. And so I just wondered how much support you could give in obviously the big challenge is for me is to find that community, to find those people. So I was wondering if there was anything that we could do together or you could help with in terms of getting it out there to people, to those, and just making sure that everybody who is hard of hearing in Lewisham kind of knows about it and knows how to apply.
That's absolutely something I would say that we are keen and excited to do as well. I think one of the best thing of having the Board of Liberty with the Board of Culture is that we can really connect with the locality and with deaf and disabled people in the locality. So we definitely aim and want to make this connection. So, in the application, feel free to say why you want to connect with these people, what's the purpose of the connection, and then for sure it's something that we would be very excited to do. Yeah, Rachel.
Just seconding that. I think in the application it's about proving the kind of exciting idea and proving that there's a kind of a need for it or a kind of thirst for it. Whether there's a way of demonstrating that you've kind of realised that there's a need in sort of Lewisham and London wide, and then we would absolutely be able to use the Borough of Culture and the GLA networks.
And how would you do that? Would you put it out, you would just partner with organisations that helped people who are hard of hearing? Or, I mean, a lot of the time I've suffered a lot of isolation because of it, because there's a lot of things laid on for people who are, do sign language, and that's a really strong kind of community, but losing your hearing later on in life, it is really hard to find other people who are like you. And so I mean, the experiment for me is actually identifying that need, because I feel it's a need for me personally, and I don't know whether that could be part of it too.
But I think you've sort of strongly identified the core of your application there. I wouldn't want to, it's a classic, I wouldn't want to preempt now how we would address that, because we would take the lead of the community and the lead artist, and yeah, there might be multiple ways that hopefully we can't imagine yet. And that would be the excitement of this sort of R&D opportunity.
Oh, thank you. That's great. It's nice just to know that that's something that we'd work as partners in. That's great. Thank you.
Definitely. Thanks. We're gonna take one last question from Irene ahead of a 10 minutes break. It's fine.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us this morning. I just have a couple of quick questions. First off, in the brief, it mentions that the work proposed should be able to be featured in a range of contexts. Is this an either or because the piece that we're thinking of putting forward with our artists is a piece that's specifically thought for a specific setting, and it's kind of linked, it's all about access, but it's linked to that setting specifically. Would it fit the brief, or does it have to be able to be presented on a graph or on a square?
I think you've hit there the inconsistency of the English language. So what was meant by that was that we didn't want to presume that everybody would want to perform on an outdoor stage or in a venue. So if it's important, if it's an intrinsic part of the research that you need to test out on in different places and different contexts, then absolutely we would respond to that.
Amazing. And then in terms of the budget, are you okay with us putting forward at this stage unconfirmed match funding if we were, for instance, to put forward something to the Arts Council, as well as just
if you highlight what it is and what the timeline is, that would be really helpful.
Also me, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna take a 10 minutes break, and then I think VJ is next, and we are also we're gonna as well order the chat from the question from the chat. Is it okay? VJ, are you happy to wait for the break? Okay, cool. See you later.
Darkest days I've ever had. The depression that's stuck in my head is slowly driving me mad. Suddenly I'm lifted, whoa, whoa, now walking on air. Suddenly I'm lifted and I'm strolling without a care. Whoa. Oh, I'm walking on the sunny side. Oh, oh, I'm walking on the sunny, slipping sunshine. Oh, oh, the sunny trains are about to leave. Oh, oh, fares and the tickets, please. So I said to my nanny what I had to do. She said, it's easy, child, this look what you could do. First it goes like this, hey, then it goes like that. Oh. Then you've got this. I know what you're talking about. Sheba, Shema de Gogo. So bye-bye. Talking about Sheba, Shema de Gogo. The bye-bye. What is she talking about? Sheba, Shema de Gogo. The bye-bye. Talking about Sheba, Shema de Gogo. Bye-bye. That's why I tell you I'm scatting the blues. That's why I tell you my nanny told me just what to do now. Whoa, whoa. I'm walking on the sunny side. Whoa, whoa. I'm walking on the sunny, slipping sunshine. Whoa, whoa. The sunny train's about to leave. Whoa, whoa. Birds and your tickets, please. Whoa, 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 whoa. Walking on the sunny side. Please don't leave me now. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Walking on the sunny, slipping sunshine. Whoa, whoa, whoa. The sunny train's about to leave. The soul train's about to go. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Fares and your tickets, please. Now I'm happy. Walking around London town softly. No, I don't think that I can really fake this. God only knows if I can really take it. Walking around London town softly. Walking around all this time softly. People say that my life's been really hard. Someone's passed me joking stack of cards. Now I'm turning around. I make no sound. I'm turning around. I make no sound. Now it's time for me to make stuff again. You know, softly hearing makes no sound. Does someone please just turn me up again? Softly hearing makes no sound. It turns my insides round and round. I'm turning around. I make no sound. I'm turning around. I make no sound. Softly, softly hearing softly, softly, softly softly hearing, softly, softly, softly hearing, softly, softly, softly hearing, softly, softly, softly hearing, softly. I want to break, scream, knock about now. Play the day. I want to break, scream, knock about now. Play the day. I'm excited, energized. Can't behave. Can't you see I'm on a high? Fully crazed. It's not easy. My body won't let me. My body says, will you please calm down? If you look into my eyes really closely, you see one or two dark clouds. I wanna break, scream, knock about now. Play your day. I wanna break, scream, knock about now. Play your day. I'm excited, energized. Can't behave. Can't you see I'm on a high? Fully crazed.
Okay, looks like it's time. I saw people enjoyed the music. It's actually fantastic. It's an heart and soul musician, Louis-based, Lizzie Aimé. I'm trying to pick up some questions as well from the chat that I've answered privately. Feel free if we missed something.
I've just seen a question in the chat from Gayatri. I don't know if you're there, Gayatri, but about whether we need to be working in Lewisham for the R&D process, or could we work from our own boroughs? I think as long as you demonstrate what the interaction is with Lewisham and the kind of sensitivity to context, that wouldn't be for us. If you make a case for it, and that's you need to be working elsewhere to bring the work to Lewisham, then of course we would absolutely consider that.
Hi, Linda. Shipra here. Just wanted to check if there were any questions you answered privately, which might be useful for others to know about as well. If there was anything that you felt might have a broader resonance, so you might want to bring that up.
There was just a question on being neurodivergent, if neurodivergency is included, and obviously I said it is, so it's deaf, disabled, and neurodivergent. I must say that obviously well, not necessarily obviously, but we follow the social model of disability, therefore we accept that's what we follow, definitely not the medical one. So neurodivergency, hard of hearing, deaf and disability at large. So that was one of it, and then some private questions regarding sending the presentation. So we will send the presentation, and hopefully as well we'll try to upload it on the website as well to see if that's possible. It would certainly help, maybe as a PDF. I'm sure it would be possible to do it actually. And well, yeah, there's always as well Liberty's email in case there's other question coming up in the next days, which is liberty@london.gov.uk. And yeah, I would say this is mainly, yeah, this is it. There's also a question on percentage of access. We are not necessarily, we're not looking at percentage, therefore, feel free to list all the access that is needed. We don't work in the sense on a percentage is for access, and then feel free to list what is needed. I can see VJ. If you feel free, feel free to ask us.
Hi. So I was born deaf, and I'd like to ask some questions. If I'm outside London, but I have a deaf team that work, and they're based in London, and it's called the Deaf Rave. And they have a studio that's based in Hackney. And also, my co-worker is Sean, and he's there on Zoom at the moment. And we work with another team as well who are called More Eyes, and they're also based in London. So before I start the application process, and I would like to know if people who are outside London, but we are linked with people inside London, is that applicable for us to apply?
Well, I would feel to say yes, in the sense that obviously it's London centric and London focused. So if that comes up in the making of the application, as you very well told us, how the activity is going to be London focused and London centric, then I would say if the applicants necessarily addresses not in London, we would still accept this. As long as the activity and the team is London centric, so as well not to occur in huge budget for traveling or for transports being outside London. The core of the activity and the people working being in London. What would you say, Rachel?
I'm that person that did the mute thing. I would completely agree, and I think, Vijay, it's how you weight the description of how you describe yourself in the application, and I think there are enough links that you've described that you can kind of forefront that and your rootedness within London, and whether you might have been programmed in Lewisham before, and those kinds of attributes, which I think if like an individual isn't then literally having an address in London, shouldn't affect it.
Great. So I've got my own elements. So I'm not sure if it's appropriate for the project. I've got my own. The context is more about music for the deaf and the deaf culture. I know I brought up a lot of deaf, around a lot of deaf people, and I've got strong networks within the deaf community. But I know a lady earlier was asking an application about that she wasn't linked to deaf community, Pinny it was, and I'm happy to help her, and I can introduce her to some deaf people. Also, there are some deaf people that can speak and who are oral, who sign up equally as well. But if Pinny would like to contact me, I'd be more than happy to help make some introductions to the oral deaf community who also use speech.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Vijay. I'm excited that there's already some connection happening in this Zoom chat. I'm not sure. Pinny
she's sorry to interrupt, but that would be a wonderful moment. But she did send a thank you, and I have to go now. Message that I've just seen, but yeah, let's put you in touch. Yeah,
we can put you in touch, Vijay, if you are happy for maybe you privately sending me your email, then I can email Pinny, sending you her email, GDPR, and then say to get in touch if she wants to, so we can be the middleman in connecting you.
That'd be great. And just one more question. I want to know how many days the festival will run for.
The festival is still very early days, in the sense that the January will be the opening day of Lewisham as Borough of Culture. Liberty Festival itself is still in progress, so we don't necessarily have a format yet that, or a time span. What would you say, Rachel?
Completely agree. So it's definitely happening. It will be later in the year. And the structure of it will be responding to the consultation that's happening from now onwards. Yeah, so we'll keep everybody updated as that's progressed and finalised. But yeah, no theme as yet for Liberty. Sorry, I should clarify, other than to say, because it's in the Borough of Culture year and being hosted by Lewisham, it would come under the umbrella of the themes that I mentioned earlier, but hopefully not in a restricted way. Those kind of overarching themes of cultural activism, climate, being a welcoming place, connecting people. Those are the areas that we're interested in.
And I must add that when Rachel mentioned the consultation, basically the GLA recently funded, and it's going to be publicly announced soon, Liberty Advisory Group, which is formed 90% by disabled people, disabled members that are professionals in the sector, of disability arts and disabled community. So we're going to have this incredible group of people that will contribute and support the vision of Liberty until 2024. So Liberty will be very much as well responding from this consultation and this group of people that has been brought together by the GLA in this commitment. So that's as well an exciting feature. I can see Benjamin, if you want to jump in.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks.
You're muted, Benjamin.
Apologies. I guess it was partly answered by your response to VJ's last question, but my question was going to be, so post R&D presentation, is the idea that the work will appear throughout 2022 and be showcased on specific days, or is it entirely project specific how that ends up manifesting? And if so, I mean, you would, I guess, outline a kind of ideal scenario in the proposal.
Do you want to take this, Rachel? I mean, it's definitely about as well outlining an ideal scenario. So what would be the best way to present the idea? And then that would be integrated with Lewisham's plan for the opening day and see how can that coexist. You know, the winning applicants, it's really about working together with Lewisham and see how to best sort of come towards each other.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of creating a body of exciting new starting points for new work, nothing would make us happier than that work would go on and have another life, be seen in other contexts. But right here during this process of the R&D applications, we're not in a position to be able to promise platforming at the Liberty Festival later in the year. But if you see a trajectory of how the piece, how you might want to see the piece manifest in the future, please do include that to give us an insight into your thinking.
Right, got you. It's just my question, I guess, is prompted by the fact that obviously if the initial day is in January, it's not normally the ideal conditions for walking outside in this country, but that later in the year, hopefully that might be more congenial.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
I can see.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Linda. Sorry.
Go for it, Rachel.
Oh, I was just really repeating ourselves, just to say, hence the language we're using is around giving a kind of interesting, exciting, stimulating insight into the heart of your creative process and what the idea is. So if it's a walk, I would hope that we would find a way of going for a walk, but maybe it's something else that's left as traces around the borough that people walk past, not just on that day, but going, you know, so there's other kind of imaginative ways that you might be able to demonstrate your idea.
I also saw this Bethan question now, and I apologize because I'm aware that the GLA website just allows PDF to be uploaded. So we will be sending out to everyone in this conversation at the end the Word documents as well. Because unfortunately the website doesn't allow for us to upload this. So with all the Eventbrite's booking emails, we'll make sure that we send as well Word copies at the end of the session. A question from Alison as well about being paid, not being employed. So basically you will receive the grant, but you won't be taxed by HMRC as self-employed on the whole, let's say £10,000 you will receive. You will obviously be taxed on your fee. So you will have yourself to sort of like write an invoice to yourself and that the amount of your fee will be taxed, but you won't be considered employed, nor you'll have to be taxed on the whole budget amount. It's only the fee that you will be paid for. And the members of the Liberty Advisory Group will be publicly announced. They are on the press grid of the GLA, so there will be a press release with bios and photo explaining, sort of giving me a bit of context on who these people are. And for the selection panel of the R&D, it would be some GLA officers, and then myself as a creative freelancer producer for the GLA. It would be members from Lewisham, including obviously Rachel, and then some members of the Liberty Advisory Group. So it will be formed by these three entities that will contribute to the selection. Is there any other question, thought, feedback, comment? I can see this is new. Michelle, will the process be reviewed? Which process?
Oh, I'll make that clearer. So as this is a new way, because Liberty used to happen quite differently. So I've been involved with Liberty for many years. And I just wonder whether this process will actually be reviewed, because obviously things like the PDF document doesn't work with accessible software. So kind of like, will it be reviewed so that thinking can be thought about, as this is aimed at disabled artists? Can it be thought about actually how the process from beginning to end meets access needs?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle.
And will that be part of any long-term evaluation?
I must say that the GLA website is being under review, because we obviously pointed out the problematics of not having Word documents.
Yeah.
So for instance, that's something that, you know, is being taken care of, knowing as well that this sort of dimension of the GLA as an organization, it's something that has been pointed out. I must say that we as well will be working closely each step with the Liberty Advisory Group on just really getting feedbacks, getting comments, getting ideas and thoughts on how we could do things better, what worked and what didn't work from previous editions. Some members of the advisory group have participated at Liberty back in 2003, where I certainly wasn't there, and I don't have that knowledge myself. But it's a really exciting group of people with lots of knowledge, and they're called to give us comment, feedbacks, and thoughts. So it's really we are aware of what doesn't work, or what are the issues, but equally as well, we're very motivated to make things better and try to really make this an accessible environment for deaf and disabled audiences. That's definitely.
But also, I think it's important, actually, deaf and disabled artists, because it isn't merely about, you know, the whole point of Liberty was it was a disabled people's festival. So I've been around a few years and been part of that, and it was very much about the whole thing being run by disabled people. So it was about having control of the whole process, and not you know, so we decided what tents there were, what activities there were, and there was lots of multiple opportunities for further artists, because I'm not clear, you said there's 7 commissions?
It's 7 to 15.
And obviously that depends on the funding that people ask for, doesn't it? I assume. And I suppose, you know, for me, it would have been really important that the fund matched access, because an access requirement, if you're not disabled, is not needed. Whereas if you're putting in a grant and it's 10,000, you know, and you need somebody £150 a day as an assistant to help you do something, that's got to come out of the budget and your artist fee, which is why with the Arts Council that's separate. And I just think for future going forwards, maybe that could be put as a point, because actually that restricts a lot of disabled artists when we put in our application. It restricts how ambitious we can be, because we've got to take the money that everybody else that would just be their fees and their overheads or whatever. We've got to also add into that our access, and not everybody, and even if you do have access to work, this might be extra to what you are actually doing already. And then once the R&D is done, is there further funding to actually take the piece forwards, and how does that work? You know, I suppose those are my questions, because I think it's, you know, as a disabled person myself, whenever I do something, I have to pay somebody to help me do it, even if I don't get it. So disabled artists are very often out of pocket every time they make an application, if that application isn't successful, as opposed to having a process where people can be supported. And I suppose for me, as it is a disabled thing, you know, it should follow those kind of guidelines in a way. That's what I'd like to see, because that would make me feel that what I as a disabled person have fought for, and in particular liberty, because David Morris, when he said, you know, sorry, I'm talking a lot, I know, but it's just something I'd like to see.
Enjoy your day. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's absolutely really relevant, and I fully understand. I fully understand what you mean, especially in regards to having a budget that is for artistic creation and the plus budget that is for access, but it's not coming from the same pot. That's absolutely something that it's absolutely relevant. And yeah, Rachel, do you want to add something?
Well, just thank you, Michelle. I completely take your points. I just wanted to clarify that the R&D money is separate to the Liberty Festival money happening next year, and arose out of the conditions this year. Brent Borough of Culture, learnings from Waltham Forest Borough of Culture, Brent Borough of Culture. Yeah, but I can see the challenges of the access being within the pot. I guess it was about not wanting to preempt or presume what those access costs might be, and wanting the R&Ds to be bespoke to each artist. But yeah, I've taken your point.
I can see Benjamin how the project might be featured throughout the year. Should this be budgeted for, or are we budgeted up to and including the other? Yes, so it's budgeted just and only until the January presentation. So the festival now, it's not considering this discussion. The timeline goes from the R&D, the deadline on the last day of June, the announcement by the end of August, beginning of September, and the final presentation at the Lewisham opening event in January. For discussions on the Liberty Festival, nothing is on the table yet. We don't have location, timing, or anything really confirmed. So everything is still quite up and open. But at this stage, we cannot really, we don't have any more sort of information.
Hello, can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm confused then. So is the £3,000 to £10,000, is that just for R&D, or is that, well, are you supposed to produce something with that?
It's for R&D only, and considering a sort of presentation in January, whatever that might be. But exactly, the focus is on the R&D. Therefore, you know, if people apply with a finished, already decided piece of work, it won't really work for us, because we really need to see the process of research and development. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be absolutely, you know, unaware of how it might look like at the end. Certainly you might have done some thinking on some sort of, but it has to be open and really experimental in trying to explore something new, something that it's not necessarily, you know, the usual in an artist practice.
Thank you. Sorry, yeah, I wasn't clear on that at all, so that's good. Thank you.
I'm glad it's clear. Is there anyone else with questions, doubts?
I see a hand, Shaz.
Yeah, apologies. I did the clap rather than the raised hand. If as an organisation we're supporting an artist to do their R&D project, could we put in a couple of applications to support different artists?
Yes, I mean, we in the frequently asked questions on the application form, we said, you know, that the sort of the main applicant's name cannot be the delivery partner of more than 2 projects. But equally, being an organization, you know, if that's clear that you have a roster of artists, or, you know, that's absolutely fine, as long as, again, it's clear how each application is supporting a different artist's R&D process.
That's great, thank you.
I can see some people leaving. Thank you all for coming, and we're glad it was helpful.
So I have a question.
Hi, Justin. Of course, please.
Hello. Yeah. So if so, the research and development project is not necessarily specific to what you're doing. So it's almost experimental. So you're taking a medium that you've never worked with before, and could that be the same with the actual idea itself? I mean, let's say you fit into neurodiverse mobility with certain challenges. How would you sort of go about that if you're not necessarily specific? I mean, you could want to experiment with a certain medium, but also not necessarily be specific with the subject matter. Yeah. You know, for example, I like the idea of art therapy within the community, for example. I mean, I was helped through a place called Core Arts, which is in Hackney, and I was wondering if there is are there places like that are similar? Let's say, I'm not necessarily so sure, but of where it goes, but is that how would you necessarily sell that in the application without coming across like I don't know what I'm doing?
Yeah, no, I totally get your question, and it's almost like, you know, you have the wish to explore something, but equally it's quite hard to preempt what form or how, you know. I guess the key aspect here is for us to see and for the panels to see in the application why you want to explore a specific thing and how. We don't necessarily need to have this defined information on the subject matter, especially if it's for yourself and kind of a new experimental sort of step towards new domains. That's absolutely fine, as long as it's valid for the panel, you know, why you want to do it, what the process would be like, you know, is a collaborative endeavor, where the collaboration would sit. So, you know, what's your role if then you are the facilitator, you know, and equally for if then the application is awarded, once you would need to sort of identify who you want to work with. So not necessarily that community, but what sort of community, what sort of people you want to involve and to work with. And then there would be, in the case of successful application, the link of having the you know, the privilege of working with Lewisham, having that relationship of connecting you to a space of a community, or creating a space for you to experiment on those ideas. But it doesn't need to be necessarily all clear on the application. It's really more about why you want to undertake this research. What do you see in this research? What do you think you can learn from it? What's your method? That's definitely what we think is important.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that for me. Thank you.
Thank you, of course. Is there someone else? Some last Steph?
Hi, it was just a quickie. I think I've made a total assumption that the presentation date is January the 1st, but I think I might have assumed that. Do you know when it is in January?
Hi. It won't be January the 1st. We're going to give ourselves a bit of a breath after Christmas and New Year's celebrations. So it will be the end of January.
Okay, great.
We've got a date right at the end of January in mind. We're just checking that out now. Yeah.
That's great to know. Thank you.
Very good question.
Hi, sorry. Will you be putting together some kind of place where we can share our details so that if we want to partner up, we can find other people who we find interesting as other artists, especially if we're trying to work on something new and you've got an idea, there may well be somebody else in Lewisham who's already working in that field or can give you advice. So is there a way of connecting us all?
That's a good point. I mean, I'm just thinking maybe if you're happy for us to share your contact with, because obviously there's the classic GDPR barriers that don't allow us to share, or even to me necessarily to see the emails or share the emails of who's in the group. However, if it's, you know, stated that you are happy for us to share the email with a little message, you know, saying if you're looking up to collaborate, up to have a discussion and talk about working together, it's a thing that we can do. I guess it's up to you of if you're comfortable with us sharing your details. But, you know, as VJ just put in the chat, his Instagram handle if everyone wants to talk about deaf culture. So maybe I'm just thinking at the end of this session, we could, the final email, you know, the wrap-up email to thank you all could also include some comments with people details to sort of, so that we can facilitate some sort of conversation.
I was just thinking that, you know, even for going forward, it might be interesting for the whole festival of Lewisham 2022 to have a sort of central directory of everybody who's, you know, who works in all these different artistic fields. I just trying to think if there's some way we could set up like something, I don't know, some way of, what am I trying to think of? So, I mean, there's some artists where, some of these artists kind of portal websites where you go in and you register with your name and you say who you are and what you do. I just wondered if there was some way of setting something simple up which could do that through the, and then it's not just relevant to, you know, this group, it would be relevant to all artists working in Lewisham to be able to kind of share details with each other. Because I presume there are going to be other commissions coming along which, you know, other call outs for other kinds of art. So, you know, I think it might be an interesting exercise. And, you know, even after Culture 2022, I mean, that's a resource then that the council has of who can do what.
Mm-hmm. It's a really good point. And it's obviously a wonderful room today. We've had, you know, with incredible people in the room. At the moment, we've not got the resource to set up a whole new website, but I think maybe, as Linda said, we can start simple. We'd have to get all your individual permissions, and then if people are willing, share this group. But then as we go forward planning for next year, think further about how we can do a kind of linking type matchmaking directory that artists might be able to opt in and out of as they would like.
Are you able to kind of email us all and ask us for our details, and we could send them to you, and then you could kind of collate one sheet of everybody? And is that possible?
Shipra, I think, is coming in on that. Our colleague Shipra from GLA.
Oh, okay.
Hi everyone. No, just I think that's a really good point that's just been raised here. And one of the things that we can probably take back to the GLA, I mean, yeah, as Rachel said, we might not have an immediate solution, but that's definitely something we should work on, is to speak to also Arts Council Unlimited, because there are other agencies as well that are working. So it cannot be something that's exclusive to this group, this need. But what you have identified is potentially something quite significant here. So maybe just leave it with us. I think this is definitely something we should see if we can have something a bit more of a joined up approach across other agencies and pool in resources to try and find a solution that, yeah, that's more long term. So it's not just linked to this R&D. It's not just linked to London Borough of Culture Year. It's actually something which is much more embedded going forward. So we can take that in that way. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
And I can also see that you, Shipra, proposed the LEAN, Lewisham Arts Network, that runs a breakfast club online. And VJ is asking if they also have a live chat room. I'm not sure if you know this, Shipra.
Sorry, I don't, unfortunately. But it is possibly a question that we could ask them. And again, I don't know if there is capacity that we can have conversation with Jane at, is Jane Hendry at LEAN, it's Lewisham Education Arts Network. It's very specific in a way that it works with arts educators, but again, I'm not quite sure. I mean, I think for some of these things, it's always good to just propose and ask. And again, at least it starts to trigger off a conversation. And whether there is an opportunity to use that platform for Lewisham London Borough of Culture Year in any way, to extend that platform for a year. These are all, I'm kind of seeing these as exploratory conversations. But I'm sure if, I mean, I'm happy to drop her a line, but equally, if you wanted to get in touch with her, or if it suited anyone's needs and expectations in the way it is run at the moment, definitely worth exploring.
Thanks to you, Shipra. Bye, Ross. Thanks for coming. Thank you. I would say that if there's no one else wanting to ask something for the last 5 minutes, I can see you're all dropping your sort of Instagram contacts, etc. So we'll make sure to add those in the last email, in the sort of wrap up. But thank you all for coming. And yeah, if there's no one else, I would just thank you all again. Really, it was a pleasure to have this chat and this conversation, and the best of luck to all the applicants. And yeah, thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda, Rachel, and everyone else.